Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously, without instruction.
See what the Empire has done to your lives? Your families and your freedom?
Good people will fight if we lead them.
The rebellion is spreading.
Now we take the war to them.
The Republic will be reorganized.
Systems either change or die.
Into the first.
You give way to an enemy this evil with this much power, and you condemn the galaxy to an eternity of submission.
To wake up. There is one way. They are fighting from the start.
Long live the Empire!
Fight the Empire!
Let's call it war.
Remember this. Try.
What do you call Obi-Wan's master if he has red hair?
Irish Kenobi.
Irish Kenobi.
Irish Gon Jinn, I don't know.
Qui-Gon Ginger.
I mean, you could have also just said Qui-Gon Jinn, get it? Because the Irish are alcoholic.
Yeah, we're doing casual Irish racism on Welcome to Daughters of Ferrix, a politics. A podcast
where I am racist against Irish people.
A podcast with
my own people.
Questionable. Welcome to Daughters of Ferrix.
You know, both of my great-grandfathers immigrated from Ireland during the potato famine.
Why would I know that?
I don't know, but they did.
Add it to the lore.
Great-great-grandfathers.
Okay.
Anyway.
Welcome to Daughters of Ferrix. Here we talk about politics, history, something else probably.
Didi Cordini.
I better be able to cut that out because no one knows who that is.
They can look it up. This is why Al Gore invented the internet.
Just so you can Google the words Didi Cordini.
Correct.
How's Didi spelled? D-E-D-E or D-I-D-I?
D-E-E-D-E-E.
Oh, the worst way. Sophie, what's Civil War?
Oh, do you want the Webster's or the one I wrote?
Master Qui-Gon, what is Civil War?
Do you want the Webster's or the one that I wrote?
I want the one that you wrote.
Okay.
Be original for once. Goddamn, Sophie.
Quote, a state wherein people who previously or officially belong to the same polity fight each other, parentheses, with violence, close parentheses.
I have some questions. You said officially belong to the same polity. What if the war between the states?
You see, the Yankee aggression was illegitimate because the southern states were sovereign from the start.
If you secede and you don't consider yourself part of the same polity, is it still a civil war?
Yes, because we don't necessarily get to choose what polity we're part of. That's not what, the social contract actually means. You don't actually have to sign the social contract to be included in it.
Okay, if I'm a racist southerner...
Which, I mean, look at you.
No one's gonna know what that means.
She has blonde hair, reader.
If I'm a racist southerner and I secede from the Union and I say, I'm not a part of this anymore, how is that less legitimate than the Union saying, you are a part of this still, and this is a civil war? At that point, isn't just
because
he
legitimacy
said, she said on the seashore?
You've just discovered the fundamental secret of politics, which is that it's all made up.
Yeah, it's all about who says what. I'm just saying.
And who has the most guns to back up what they say.
I just think that's a flaw in the definition of civil war. I want to know what you think.
Well, the polity is not the same as an institution, right? I think that Southerners would have acknowledged that they were previously a part of the United States of America and her various overseas dependencies, but they left.
Okay. So it's...
Everyone acknowledges that they were always part of that polity, whether voluntarily or involuntarily.
Okay.
It's just them trying to leave using violence, which historically is reserved for the state that theoretically governs the polity.
So today we're talking about civil war in Star Wars, and kind of the majority of Star Wars conflicts
I think that all Star Wars conflicts are civil war.
Definitely a lot of them. The biggest named civil war is the Galactic Civil War, right? That is the conflict between the Empire and a bunch of dudes who shot them in the head. And I don't know how much I love calling that a civil war. I think it seems less obviously civil war coded.
Well, what you have to understand about a civil war is typically you have some state institution institutions on both sides. If you just have a bunch of guys in the forest who dress up in camouflage and then take their AR-15s and walk into the United States Capitol, that is not a civil war. That is an insurrection. What a civil war is, both parties sort of have laid claim to parts of the state apparatus and are using it to bash each other. Even in conflicts that we would call a revolution or insurrection, like the Russian Revolution, also known as the Russian Civil War, the Bolsheviks had a lot of state infrastructure on their side. 2/3 of the military defected to the Red Army. Big numbers of people from the state and state institutions ended up on the side of the Bolsheviks, even though that is allegedly, quote, a revolution rather than a civil war.
The Galactic Insurrection. That's a cooler name.
There aren't really any, major state institutions on the side of the rebels.
Not really. I mean, the rebels will steal shit, but that hardly counts.
Right, and stealing shit, John Brown stole a bunch of shit, and he was not doing a civil war, he was doing an insurrection.
Leia and Bale were, representatives from Alderaan and also, heavily involved in the Alliance, but that wasn't,
The military assets and the civil government of Alderaan were not officially involved in the
Alderaan
rebellion.
had a defense force, so...
Alderaan's 4 guys with blasters and outdated fighter.
Guys with stupid hats and a rebel blockade runner.
Sure.
Okay.
They were not officially part of the rebellion.
So we're gonna throw that one out. The Galactic Civil War.
Not a civil war.
We don't care about her.
She's
an
insurrection.
Shittily. I want to know who named her. Who's responsible? Not in the person who named it was probably someone working on the West End Games booklets back in the day. But who in universe named her? Because that's not a good name. Anyway, lots of civil wars in Star Wars, including actual civil wars. There's stuff that's mentioned one-off as flavor text. That's the Chiss Civil War in Legends, the Mandalorian Civil Wars from The Mandalorian.
I do love to have a planet-wide civil war that's at the scale of World War II or larger, and it just be brushed off as the Chiss Civil War.
I would kill to know more of that. So I think there are 3 mentions of this Chiss Civil War in Legends.
Because the funny thing about Star Wars is that almost universally every planet is somehow entirely united, which I think is very funny. But
it's for convenience in the plot.
Exactly.
So something that we see fairly commonly is these larger galactic conflicts, the stuff that you're writing the Star Wars about, and then smaller civil wars happening inside of that. The Coruscanti Civil War, for example. In canon, the Coruscant Civil War is a conflict that happened over the course of the year in between Endor and the Empire's official surrender. And this is a struggle where basically the people of Coruscant and some of the institutions are trying to retake all of Coruscant.
All of their institutions.
Yes,
and
precisely.
all of their 4 trillion whatevers.
Yeah, however many. 4 trillion whatevers.
Thingy-majiggers.
But yeah, I mean, they're steadily gaining ground, and eventually, after the New Republic kicks the Imperial's ass at Jakku, Mas Amedda signs the Galactic Concordance, which ends the war, and it also ends the Coruscanti Civil War.
And that makes me wonder, because there is obviously a point where the Galactic Civil War becomes a civil war rather than an insurrection, and how blurry the lines of those two things can be, because there comes a point where the institution which had previously maintained the overriding polity still maintains that polity exists, while the insurrectionary force has gained a lot of state power and co-opted a lot of state institutions. That just makes me wonder, at what point does it become a civil war instead of just an insurrection?
Certainly in Star Wars canon, I think that would be the point where the Alliance to Restore the Republic transitions into the New Republic.
Right, it's the front for the salvation of the southern states becomes the Confederate States of America.
Precisely, the same. The Rebel Alliance, the same as the Confederate United States.
Okay, well, you get the idea. No, it's just the Confederate States of America.
I said it weird.
Although at one point, I guess you could have said the official acronym of the United States was the Confederated United States of America when we were under the Articles of Confederation, which everyone likes to forget about.
Okay, we've tossed aside the Galactic Civil War. She mostly doesn't count. She's interesting, but she's weird. We're actually going to talk about the 2 other biggest conflicts. First, we're going to talk about... Sophie, are you familiar with the Cold War?
No, it's great. It's for viewers who are unfamiliar because you were, like me, born in the 21st century. It was this really great thing where the forces of freedom destroyed the tyrannical communist overlords of the Soviet Union. And there was no more complexity to it than that.
Are you familiar with Wikipedia.com/cold_war? I assumed.
No.
Because that's what we're talking about. We are talking about the Cold War. Not the Cold War, but the Cold War.
Thank you. That clears so many
I
things
love
up.
Star Wars. They could have thrown in the New Republic Cold War.
Oh,
but
is this the war with, like, the First Order?
Yes.
Oh,
This is the stuff that
interesting.
you don't
Why
know.
do they call it the Cold War?
You'll see. So the Imperial Machine, massive institution, right? It is too large to fully dissolve. So
Skill issue.
yeah, we could have just eliminated it and had absolutely no problems getting rid of the entire
New
Imperial
Republic Death
bureaucracy.
Star.
What assets weren't themselves absorbed into the New Republic after the signing of the Galactic Concordance were consolidated into what is called the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant. And by it is called that, I mean, it's been referred to that once in a book that came out like last year, but that's the only name we have for it. So that's what I'm going to call it.
It's a good name, suitably bureaucratic.
Yeah. The Inner Systems Imperial Remnant, it's a feeble successor state to the Empire. It has
Nice.
limited sovereignty.
Byzantine Empire.
It is planned for and guaranteed by the Galactic Concordance. We're gonna talk about that concordance a lot, even though we don't actually know what it says.
We don't have text.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem in Star Wars. We'll come up against
We'll be
that.
like, here is this crucially important document called the Constitution of the New Republic. Turns out we don't have it, but we are just going to make up some rules, and later this is going to be extremely difficult to justify when we do end up writing the Constitution of the New Republic.
To be fair, I think you would have a conniption if there was an official text of like the Republic,
Oh, it's
and we read
probably
it,
like
and it would
some
be
horrible Articles of Confederation shit.
Yeah, certainly. So the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant is a bunch of Imperial loyalist systems, not including Coruscant. They got Coruscant. It's these Imperial loyalist systems and sort of the operational boundaries of what remains of the Imperial military, sort of, as an institution, I should say. And this kind of echoes the, like, Legends coexistence between the legally recognized Imperial Remnant and the wider New Republic. That, in Legends, is like Fleet Admiral Pelion signs the treaty in 19 ABY to guarantee, basically, that this war is over. In canon, it's a year after Endor. They kicked the Empire's ass, and it's legally recognized, but the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant fails to maintain itself as a state, collapses, and a lot of its worlds integrate into the New Republic.
Poor Admiral Pelion.
Pelion's not a part of it. At least,
it's not his
probably
fault.
Not. No. Pelion is off doing illegal bullshit in
Good for him.
canon.
Honestly, the only Imperial officer I stand.
So the Battle of Jakku happens. It ends. And basically, most of the Imperial Navy comes to Jakku. It's their asses thoroughly trounced by the New Republic. And then most of it that survives just kind of dips. Some of it becomes part of the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant, but...
Not enough to maintain order within the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant.
No. There are Imperial assets after this that are unaccounted for. A bunch of these ships that managed to get away from Jakku, and the SSD Eclipse. That is Palpatine's flagship.
Is that the one that the guy with the hole in his head, Snoke, is that his ship?
No.
Okay.
No, he commands the massive capital ship, the Supremacy. We don't actually know exactly,
That's like a British Navy-ass ship name right there.
They all are. Anyway, the Eclipse, we don't actually know what happens to her, but we do know where they ended up. Those missing ships and army assets and like some of the missing leadership from what's called the Shadow Council, it's a whole thing. We don't even know exactly how it works. Don't worry about it. End up in what's called the Unknown Regions. And this is a large chunk of space on the left side of the map.
Yeah, the left side of the galaxy is really hard to get into for some...
It's just not
for
charted.
lore reasons.
It's just people aren't over there as much. It's a fucking galaxy, but yes, also because it's convenient to have...
The mysterious forest.
Well, yeah, because then you can have some magic planet that Luke's on that people can't find, but it's over there.
Wait, is that in the unknown sector or whatever?
It is in the unknown regions, yeah. Octo is in the unknown regions. Because that area is not mapped
why
out.
It's so hard for him to find.
Right. They have a portion of this map, but they can't, like, match it to anything because
the
it's
section
not
is unknown, okay.
Precisely. And you know, Grand Admiral Ray Sloan retreats with a bunch of these forces from Jakku, takes them into the unknown regions, and this unknown region's remnant gains enough of a foothold in order to grow its numbers and resources after, like, colonizing large portions of barely mapped space, dominating, like, smaller insular or hermetic planetary governments.
Not cool.
No, not cool. They're still fascists.
Hermetic meaning, like, they haven't left the planet yet.
Or, like, they don't. There are species
They have like
that
a religious thing against.
There are species that have cultural aversion to that. They also occupy another unknown region's planet, Ilum. Ilum was once sacred to the Jedi Order. It was a place where a lot of...
This is the one where Palpatine does his thing, isn't it?
Oh, no, that's Exegol.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking about Exegol. We'll talk about Exegol another day.
Okay, sorry.
No. Ilum is a planet where a lot of Jedi younglings are sent to find their first Kyber crystals. After the Jedi get, Got.
See you next episode.
The Empire goes hard on Ilum and just absolutely destroys it with mining operations in order to get enough Kyber to use in its various Death Star battle stations as focusing crystals. Bullshit. But also, it's very on brand for Palpatine to be like, you Jedi people have this sacred planet. I want to have a laser. I want to have my evil space laser be a giant fucking lightsaber that I can just shoot. Anyway, so they have occupied this planet. They're doing whatever the fuck they do with whatever's left of what the Empire was doing there. Eventually, they start to put down some roots in the known galaxy. They're not presenting themselves publicly, but they have a secret partnership with the corporate sector authority. So this remnant grows in power and in its own military might until by 21 ABY, which is 21 years after A New Hope, they become the First Order, which is a covert military junta that becomes the successor to the Galactic Empire. So anyway, you've got this bullshit military organization over here doing that shit. In the known galaxy, you have Imperial loyalists across all of your bureaucratic structure. All non-combatant Imperial officers are given conditional pardons by the New Republic.
I will say, in real life, you don't do that. You just kill everyone, and I am not kidding. Unless they actively assisted in your revolution or actively resisted the revolution, if you're the regime and you win, you kill everyone. The only case where there has been serious blanket amnesty for all the bad guys, right, was basically the American Civil War, where we were just we couldn't possibly hang any Confederate bastards because reasons.
Because they're us, you guys.
I don't give a shit. They should have hung frickin' General Lee right next to Davis. Traitor's piece of shit. But anyway, the point being that this doesn't happen very much, and I just wanted to point that out.
I think the reasoning is partially, one, they are trying to gain a lot of ground very quickly. The New Republic goes from establishing itself in any way to sovereign in a year. It is integrating as much Imperial stuff into itself so that it can reach that legislative scale.
This is also why there are so many Hitler particles in Germany still. This isn't a civil war, so this is a little different. You don't typically, when you just win a regular war, just kill everyone, because that's not why you're fighting a regular war. You're not trying to eliminate the other person, you just want something they have. Or you want to not die, in the case of the various Allied countries. When they were forming the East and West German states, right after the war, guess who is all the competent and qualified people to run everything?
The Nazi Party.
It was all Nazis all the way down. And, a lot of them were like, oh, I was forced into being a Nazi. I definitely do not want to be a Nazi. It was forced upon me. Oh, no, I am a poor, weak little German soy boy. Oh.
That's what the New Republic was, baby.
And then they just integrated all the Nazis. And for a while it seems to have worked, but it also meant that now we have Alternative for Deutschland who may be in government, which is very bad.
Let's talk about New Republic politics.
Fun.
Let's talk about New Republic party politics. So, in New Republic, you have two main political factions that form by the time this shit is going down. You have the populists, not that kind of populist. You have the populists who advocate planetary independence and individual member state sovereignty, actual states' rights, right?
So the anti-federalists.
And then you have the centrists.
Alexander Hamilton.
You have the centrists who prioritize a more powerful head of state, military, the authority of the central government's hierarchy, interplanetary taxation, stronger law enforcement, ideological stances that take some of their roots in the New Order ideology that the Galactic Empire propaganded.
Or also take some of their roots in having a government.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. We'll talk about that.
Because, what it sounds like is these centrists are just, pretty bog standard, we should have a government libs, and then these other guys are don't tread on me, I'm a sovereign citizen, the state of Naboo is sovereign.
I will say They are sometimes libs, but some of them have... Okay, let's keep going.
I mean, look, I'm not going to say that there aren't a lot of libs who have fascist tendencies, like, for example, Alexander Hamilton. Look it up, kids. Alexander Hamilton, I know everyone loves him, is actually the bad guy of the story, and we should have listened to Aaron Burr. Basically, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a fascism apologist and should be.
Yeah, he's a lib. Anyway, do you remember the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant?
I do.
A lot of centrist systems were those guys who were the Inner Systems Imperial Remnant.
So they brought some of their baggage to the New Republic.
They brought their baggage. A minority of centrist members definitely held, like, some fondness, some nostalgia for the old empire. The book Bloodline states that at least 30 centrist senators were fascinated by and collectors of imperial artifacts.
Wow, okay, that's actually quite funny.
Some centrists see New Republic educational centers as inferior to those on their homeworlds, and some of them question historical accounts of pivotal events like the Battle of Yavin, or just kind of the official narrative of the Galactic Civil War itself. One centrist senator...
They question the official narratives. Do you know how much of a euphemism that is?
I know exactly how much of a euphemism that is.
Like...
Listen, I'm not denying that the Empire was bad, but
I'm not
how would they have killed that many people with that many ovens?
I mean, Death Stars. Sorry.
So,
Good Lord.
Some centrists motioned for the abolition of the chancellorship role in the Senate in favor of a first senator role, so a position with more executive authority over the New Republic's military and economic assets.
That sounds awfully like they just want the Emperor back.
Leia was going to run as the populist nominee.
Okay, that would have been base, though.
It didn't work out. So, in a dialogue between Ransom Casterfo, so that's a politician
Ransom
who...
is such a cool name. I'm going to name my kid Ransom.
Certified, Knives Out moment. So, Ransom Casterfo is a politician who serves on the New Republic Senate as a centrist. Not a centrist, but a centrist. He's talking to populist Senator Leia Organa. Casterfo says, "As for political philosophy, all we centrists want is to take a fair look at what aspects of the Empire actually worked. Centralizing power, creating maximum efficiency, binding the worlds of the galaxy closer together. Can you honestly say it did no good whatsoever?" Leia says, "Whatever good came from the Empire came at too high a price." And Ransom says, "I agree completely. But what if we could achieve some of those same benefits without repeating Palpatine's mistakes?" Ransom is a fascist apologist, but he also gets got by his own party. Ransom collects...
For being too much a lib.
Kind of, yeah. He eventually does actually get...
Converts to the eternal science of Leiaism.
Yeah,
populism.
he joins the anti-fascists. Like, Ransom is a problematic fave, but Ransom's whatever. He's fine. Anyway, but he's wrong here in this. Ransom does collect Imperial memorabilia.
I mean,
but he also...
Who's among us?
He was too young.
Oh, he was not alive during the Empire.
I think he was a kid.
Oh.
I don't know exactly. But he's a couple decades younger than Leia. Anyway, the centrist party gains and maintains secretive ties with the First Order.
Oh, I don't
Very
like
much
that.
aids in that military organization's attempts to manipulate the New Republic for its own ends.
This is like the business plot. Do you know what the business plot is?
No, go ahead.
So, during the 30s, right, America was kind of sort of doing a communism a little bit. And by that I mean the New Deal. FDR was, sort of creating the American welfare state. And obviously this leads inevitably into Soviet-style communism via the dialectics of history. But there were some business guys who also believed this, both in the United States and abroad. And so they formulated something that is now known as the business plot to launch a coup to overthrow FDR to save the United States from communism.
What?
Little known fact of U.S. history.
Did it work? Did they save the U.S. from communism?
Well, they did, but as it turned out, the United States did not need to be saved from communism because the immortal science of America is stronger than the immortal science of Marxism-Leninism.
So far. So, the First Order is a little bit too involved in centrist politics and not openly. There's some, minutia there. I didn't want to explain all of it, so we're just going to kind of skip over it.
We could do, a resist lib analogy of, this is like the Russians being involved in the 2016 election
this is like Donald
to
Trump
overthrow Hillary Clinton. Bloodline.
This book that a lot of this comes from, Bloodline, is really interesting because I think it came out in 2017.
Oh boy, so this was
And
definitely...
It wasn't as lib as it might be, but it's definitely interesting to read it in hindsight. I definitely think that if it were written now, Claudia Gray, the author, would not have woobified Ransom Casterfoe. I think she would have gone, it's bad that he's a fascist. Claudia Gray. Nice lady. Seems like she has decent enough politics.
Decent enough politics in the way that I have decent enough politics, or decent enough politics in the way that, like...
Decent enough politics in the way that most people who write Star Wars have decent enough politics.
Fair enough.
Okay, so the centrists see the Senate as indecisive, as incapable of enforcing its own legislation. They see the populists as entirely opposed to the ends that they want. And this staunch opposition puts the Senate into a standstill.
Uh-oh.
They shut down the government.
Ding, ding, ding. Polarization. You mean a predecessor of Civil War? Wow.
Ultimately, after all the infighting, after the partisan politics, after the political gridlock, nearly all centrist worlds secede from the New Republic by 29 ABY.
And proclaim their allegiance to what?
This gives the First Order ground to transition from a purely military institution to a public political one, which they propagandized as legitimate rule in the legacy of the Galactic Empire as opposed to the illegitimate New Republic. And thus the Cold War began.
I see. Wherein the New Republic did not want to do the Cold War.
The New Republic tried very hard not to do the Cold War.
Maybe they should have, because then they wouldn't have got their asses
Yes,
kicked.
they should have, Sophie. We don't have a lot from the Cold War, and I am desperate to have more. It is my
So Leia is
second
like
most wanted
Senator
thing.
Joe McCarthy.
Yeah.
In that she is keeping the freedom safe from the menace of communism, also known as the First Order.
There's some interesting stuff that we're not going to talk too much about this section, but the Cold War is largely characterized by this political tension between the seceded centrist worlds and the New Republic. The New Republic largely refuses to take military action against the First Order. They see it as this is a quote from a reference novel, a backwater hermit state that posed little threat to galactic reconstruction. This is all while the First Order is intimidating and occupying nearby systems. They're pressuring those systems to accept the protection of the First Order's vast naval and armed forces in an expansionist effort that is breaking the terms of the then 29-year-old galactic concordance. You're seeing scuffles on the edge of New Republic territory, sometimes with the New Republic Defense Fleet, but officially, the New Republic Defense Fleet is not allowed to fight back, even in defense against the First Order.
So instead, Princess Leia launches a proxy war.
So instead, Leia starts to put together a paramilitary organization. She hasn't started yet. The First Order is bigger than they are, so...
I mean, certainly. What if the Rebel Fleet, makes...
the Resistance Fleet is
Rebel
four
Fleet
guys.
makes the Resistance Fleet look like kids playing in a sandbox, and all they had was, a few Mon Cala cruisers.
The Resistance is a lot more stuff in, The Force Awakens than it is by the end of The Last Jedi. So Leia is filming this paramilitary organization, and it is to be ready to push back when the First Order starts an all-out war, because she doesn't believe the New Republic is ready, because she's correct. I have complicated feelings, but Leia is proven right.
Leia, noted foreign policy hawk.
Well, and at this point, Leia's not a senator anymore. She does have...
She's just the most respected person in the galaxy.
No. It is publicly known that Leia is Darth Vader's daughter. When that is leaked, it does not go over well.
Okay, that's not her fault, though.
No, but it's politics.
If somebody, was Hitler's daughter...
Do you really think that, the conservatives would let them live that down? No, they would say that that Joe Biden is trying to do...
They would. Mussolini's granddaughter is the current prime minister of the Italian Republic.
Hitler's grandson or whatever was in the Conservative Party... That's what I'm saying, is if it's on your opposing political side, them having 100% Hitler particle blood is disqualifying, right? And I'm not saying it's correct. We know that Leia is fine.
And based.
This is the reason she doesn't get elected as first senator, is...
Oh, they dig that up. The centrists dig it up. Oh my god.
And then use it
This is
to disqualify her.
This is Leia's emails.
And then Leia resigns.
From being a senator.
Yeah.
Where is she a senator from?
She is the Alderaan sector. So senators represent sectors. And so even though Alderaan as a state doesn't exist anymore, there's stuff there. There are trade routes and stuff. Anyway, so she's not a politician anymore, but she does have support from members of her party. There are populist senators, there are people who are friends with Leia or just kind of support the cause that put resources, put money, presumably not illegally, but we don't actually know, into Organa's resistance. So in turn, the First Order knows about this like under the table dealings with the resistance and uses this scattered support of the resistance to create further resentment of the Republic, kind of warmonger a little bit, get more support from their political base. In the speech that Armitage Hux gives before, he specifically names the resistance as one of the things that is most despicable about the New Republic, even though
it's
the
not
New Republic
associated with.
No!
The New Republic disavows the resistance.
Pretty much. If they were put in that position, I guarantee that the New Republic Senate would have wholeheartedly disavowed the resistance.
Especially given that they have a military.
They have a defense fleet. Full-scale warfare does happen because the Cold War is ended when the First Order uses a super weapon built from the corpse of Ilum, as we mentioned earlier, to detonate the entire Hosnian system in a preemptive strike. They destroy all 5 planets in the system. That's Cardota, that's Corsilius, that's Ratio, that's Hosnian,
this
and
is
Hosnian
important,
Prime.
Presumably, correct?
Hosnian Prime is the then galactic capital.
That might be considered problematic for the continued functioning of the Republic. Also, a good portion of the Republic fleet, right?
A good portion of the New Republic Defense Fleet, the New Republic Senate, the majority of its governing structure, and Cold War over. Conflict happens after that between the First Order and the Resistance, but in what war occurred, the First Order won. They win. They won. The New Republic didn't do anything, and the First Order won. The end.
Good.
And does the First Order got yeah, but in like a citizens' uprising. Like that's a completely different conflict. The New Republic lost the Cold War.
And just the ensuing war.
The New Republic doesn't exist in the ensuing war, largely. The New Republic.
So is it just like individual systems fighting the First Order, or they just like give up?
I mean, there are individual systems, but mostly it's individual systems putting resources into their resistance.
Which was from the beginning vastly, horribly outmanned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What's left of the New Republic Defense Fleet is ordered as planetary defense for bigger member worlds, right? Individual, So
the Republic fleet does not get involved in the war?
No. It gets taken by little squirrely senators and used to hole up in their little systems.
Yeah, I can see why Leo was a little bit bitter looking at the...
Yeah, it's not...
Because
it's not a great
all of her
scene.
friends and former friends and stuff were just well, we have this whole fleet, right? And it's not great, but it exists. And you can't have it, even though you're fighting for us.
Okay, the people who would have supported Leia were already doing so as best as they could.
Say what you will, the First Order is a lot better at war than the Empire was.
Yeah, no, the First Order, I think, does some stuff that the Empire didn't do. Kind of the biggest element that I'm aware of in their military doctrine that differs from the Empire is the willingness to, retreat before all your forces get blown up.
Interesting concept.
Yeah, it's because they don't have infinite stormtroopers, and instead they just have a lot of stormtroopers. They're well, these might be valuable military assets. They also put more money into the training and literal raising of their stormtroopers, so that makes a degree of sense. Yeah. I quite like the First Order as a weird-ass military institution. They're fucking freaks, and I would like a little bit more about them in canon, but they've got some stuff going on. Anyway, so when we're talking about war, I like to try to understand it in, the most basic of terms. What is the point? What's the point? Why do we do the war? Why do a war instead of literally anything else?
War is politics with a lightsaber.
War is politics with a lightsaber.
Right.
Star Wars is politics with a lightsaber.
The reason we do war is a lot of times for no reason, because, some inbred fuck is those infidels looking awful tasty.
Well, yeah, I mean, the First Order's reasons for doing war are not that complicated.
In the modern era, when we have states and things that most of the time pursue their self-interest as polities, we do war when talking won't work anymore. When our interests are so irreconcilable that, the only way to do it is for the other person to either be battered into submission or simply stop existing. The Allies, I'm Neville Chamberlain, okay? The Allies, we have many differences with Adolf Hitler. And, we can talk it out. He's a reasonable man. We go to Munich. Oh, we talked it out and he ignored everything we said. Oh, Now he's invaded Poland, which was the one line we said he couldn't cross, and we have to pretend to do a war until we get invaded. And we're gonna invade Germany by like 5 miles with our much larger military, and then not do anything else, and then just lose the war. This being France. We're going to wait until Belgium actually gets invaded.
We're not here to talk about the New Republic's ongoing policy of appeasement, because eventually, if I can, I want to actually have an episode about it. The First Order is not a complicated institution. They're fascists. They have to have the mobilizing passions, the belief in their own right to dominate, the way Robert Paxton puts it in Anatomy of Fascism. They have to be doing war.
Otherwise, there's no reason for their existence.
Right. Otherwise, no one's going to support them. Because that's what they're for. The First Order is the biggest hammer. To justify the hammer and to use the hammer,
you have to come up with some nails.
Precisely. The New Republic, I'm sure, partially avoids out-and-out conflict for, like, the sake of its citizens and resources, but they pay dearly. They get exploded. Rip bozo. The Resistance, why do they end up fighting? They end up fighting because they're anti-fascist, because they're going to get killed if they don't do anything, right? It's not complicated for them. We're not dealing with very complicated elements. It's very Saturday morning cartoon. Welcome to Star Wars. We'll have this conversation again in a bit, and it's a lot more complicated, so. Let's talk about the Clone Wars. Do you remember in episode 1 when there was kind of too much stuff to talk about and I just had to really pare it down because we happened to be discussing the most written about government in Star Wars? We're going to talk in really bare-ass terms about the most written about conflict in Star Wars. So,
because it's us. It's OMG. It's so us.
There's so much.
We're so the Republic.
We're the Republic, guys. We're the Republic. We are the Republic. But there's a lot to talk about the Clone Wars, and we're not going to talk about all of it, but we are going to talk about the political situation in which it arose. By 32 BBY, we are going back almost 70 years.
The olden days.
Yeah. At this point, the Galactic Republic is widely seen by its citizenry as ineffectual. The people making the decision, the senators, the legislators, lived far removed from their constituents. They live on Coruscant, which publicly is really seen as this glittery, glitzy center of the galaxy. Coruscant has its own problems, but those problems are not where the senators are. Those lawmakers grow more and more, shall we say, receptive to the money and interests of their corporate constituents rather than the individuals that they supposedly represent. A lot of member worlds began to question if the planetary taxation that came with being members of the Republic was worthwhile when the regulatory and legislative body was this corrupt and this useless. Outer Rim worlds, particularly ones that were beset with a bunch of pirates and warlords and shit, and the wider Republic slave trade, technically outlawed but not really enforced, they see a negligent Republic, one that refuses to maintain its own law and order. We know the story of Episode 1. The Trade Federation, led by Viceroy Nute Gunray, illegally invades Naboo. They use a blockade as a cover for this invasion to force Queen Padme Amidala.
Just out of curiosity, how do you legally invade a planet?
If there isn't a law against it, you can just kind of do it. I don't know. If you don't write down Nute Gunray can't invade in your galactic constitution, then he can do whatever he wants.
I'm a little surprised that it isn't a constitutional amendment that states aren't allowed to invade each other, given that it has happened a couple of times.
Well, maybe it's by design. Maybe it's
it's a pressure mechanism, right? If Ohio and Michigan really want to fight over Toledo,
they should be
allowed to fight over Toledo.
Nute Gunray invades. Trade Federation, etc. So they are trying to get Amidala to sign a treaty that ensures greater Federation control of their resource-rich system and to essentially strong-arm the Republic into altering the tax code because they don't want this type of blockade to happen again, right?
Let me just invade a planet to alter the tax code.
I believe the original goal of the plan is to seize control so quickly that the Senate has, quote-unquote, no choice but to accept Federation control of the system. They just do it so fast. You look, and it's under its own control, and you look back, and it's Nute Gunray, and you're like, that seems different.
It's happened to other people. It's worked before.
Such as?
Austria.
Oh.
1936.
Yeah, I didn't think about them. All right, we've seen episode 1. The Queen escapes the invasion. She goes to the Galactic Senate to intervene, and the Supreme Chancellor is unseated by a vote of no confidence because he's I don't know, we can't really do anything. That seems really hard.
We'll form a committee.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And she's they're there, now. I got here. It took us a while. There was this kid, and there was a pod race, and it took up half the movie, but we're here now. The invasion is happening now, and Volorum's yeah, well, we'll do the politics. And so he gets got. He was replaced by the Naboo Senator, senator. He's replaced by Sheev Palpatine because there is such a groundswell of support for this cause. Probably helps that a 14-year-old girl is the one advocating for it in the Senate, frankly.
A 14-year-old, queen.
Yeah. People are like, oh, God, okay, that seems bad. I don't know. So,
first of all, why does your constitution allow a 14-year-old to become queen?
So, culturally, the people on Naboo, the human people, I should say, view younger queens, oh, God, as less corrupt. The potentially more... The word that's used is naive, but I don't think that's really reasonable because Padme...
I don't like the word
fully,
less corrupt.
Padme is fully educated in this shit because that's what she has been prepared for. She is prepared to be queen.
Don't you have to be elected?
She is elected queen.
So you go to queen preparatory school and then you're elected queen?
Sort of. Yeah, let's go with that.
That's a very weird system.
I mean, it's Star Wars. They're an alien planet. Whatever. They have weird cultural hang-ups. So do we.
Cultural hang-ups aren't.
We only ever elect white Christian men, you know? All right, so the invasion gets trounced. The people of the planet kick Nute Gunray in the ass.
They throw some weird blue balls at droid.
We don't need to worry about how. We don't need to worry about what happens.
They tried spinning.
Symbian circles.
They tried spinning. As it turned out, that was a good trick.
It was a great trick. Anyway, not important. Anakin, not really relevant to this story, thank God. The public and the Senate see the story of this Naboo queen as a sympathetic one of corporate overreach and of Republic complacency within a system of overly complex legal precedents and bureaucracy. Gunray, who led this invasion, is arrested by the Republic. Nute Gunray. Nute Gunray. Gunray's powerful. He has money in a lot of places. And every time he almost faces justice for this corporate overreach that he was responsible for.
Corporate overreach resulting in the deaths of a lot of people.
Yeah, they tortured some folks.
I don't know why they had to do death camps. I don't know why that was a necessary factor.
For fun, maybe, you know? Maybe Nute's just into that.
Nute Gunray is just into death camps.
Nute Gingrat's just into the death camps. Okay.
Only for immigrants.
Gunray has a lot of money. Gunray has a lot of... and...
Sexual favors.
No, not sexual favors that we know of. No sexual favors offered by head of the Trade Federation, Nute Gunray, the Duros with the weird hat.
Hey, you don't know what he could do with that hat.
Or all of the judges declare a mistrial. Every time.
Oh, that's suspicious.
Over years, Gunray escapes legal consequence.
For invading a planet.
And this is seen by some members of the Senate and some members of the public as even more proof of a corrupt, dysfunctional system.
I mean, I would say that probably is not to be seen as proof. It is proof.
It is both seen as and is proof. Yeah, the populace feels both alienated and distrustful of this system, and we see discussions of secession from the Galactic Republic being more and more popular.
18th century political philosopher, something, I can't pronounce his first name, Rousseau.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Don't you speak French?
Jean-Jacques.
Jar Jar Binks.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
John Jackson Miller.
Talks about this thing called the social contract, right? And you have to have the consent of the governed, which sort of implies a right of secession in a democratic society.
In 24 BBY, years later, something called the Raxus Address is given. The Raxus Address is a formal declaration of secession by Sereno's Count Dooku. Dooku names the Republic as hopeless, as burdened by corruption and favoritism, and it kicks off a secessionist movement for the next 2 years where thousands of systems secede from the Republic. They form together under Dooku's leadership as the Confederacy of Independent Systems. After the Raxus Address, the Confederacy forms the Separatist Senate, which is a legislative body set to govern separatist worlds, comprised of some ex-Republic senators and some previously unrepresented systems.
And they have a cooler building than the Galactic Senate does.
They have a much more normal building.
They have a very parliamentary building, and I appreciate
it's just kind of a rectangle, because they don't have so many guys that they have to have the biggest building.
Mushroom.
Yeah. The Separatist Senate is helmed by Count Dooku, who is the head of state of the CIS.
Head of state and head of government are two different things. Head of state is...
He's both.
Oh, so he's the president.
He's the president. I don't think he has an official title, but yeah, he leads the Senate and the Confederacy.
I do think it's interesting that we actually see Dooku continuing to interact with the Senate, even though Star Wars, because the Separatists are supposed to be the bad guys a lot of the time, kind of portrays them as him as like kind of an autocrat, but he's not.
He is.
As much as he looks like he
We'll
is.
talk about it.
Okay.
The Separatist Senate gives most authority regarding like trade regulation and taxation to member worlds and member systems. And this is like in order to facilitate the more decentralized ideal of the CIS in opposition to the Republic. So you have the populists and you have the centrists.
Our king, whomst we stand, Thomas Jefferson, Count Dooku.
So Dooku is eventually granted emergency wartime powers.
God damn it. Don't give emergency wartime powers to your leaders. They don't give them up.
Well, he didn't really have a chance to give them up.
Except like the 4 dictators before Caesar, but let's ignore that.
He was kind of got during the war, so. With these wartime powers, a tremendous amount of wartime decision-making is vested in the Separatist Council, which is an advisory body that is essentially comprised of representatives from the Trade Federation, the Techno Union, the Intergalactic Banking Clan, the Corporate Alliance, the Geonos and Hives, and the Commerce Guild. I don't think the Separatist Council is widely known about. I don't know if they are an absolute secret from the Separatist Senate. I kind of think that they are. They are definitely not meant to be known about in a public sense.
They're not advertised.
No. All of these guys provide various amounts of funding, troops, naval assets to the war effort. Groups like the Banking Clan continue to work with the Republic despite their open participation in the Separatist cause. They are like officially neutral, but The Trade Federation and the Techno Union continue to have senators representing their interest in the Galactic Republic. Their participation in the Separatist Council is it's a secret. Anytime anyone's like, don't you guys kind of work with the Separatists? Lot Dodd, the Trade Federation representative in the Senate, is like, no, what are you talking? What
do you
That's
mean?
crazy,
Our battle
Todd.
droids and our style of
insane.
spaceships are the main components of
insane.
Separatist imperial forces.
We're just little guy. I'm just a little birthday boy. The Trade Federation joins the Separatist Council on Gunray's condition that now Senator Padme Amidala be assassinated, which is wild. He's like, fine, I'll do your thing. Just kill this little girl who pissed me off 10 years ago.
I will start a galaxy-wide war if you kill this one person, because I really hate her.
Well, yeah, the assassination plot goes to shit. It fails. A Jedi gets involved. Our king, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he investigates this shit, and he finds this droid army. Obi-Wan, his Padawan, we're mentioning him again, Senator Padme Amidala, yeah, Anakin, did it. They're all captured. They're set to be executed, and over 200 Jedi Knights, on behalf of the Republic, go to save Obi-Wan and others. This breaks out into a full-scale battle with the newly deployed Separatist droid army. The Republic sends almost 200,000 reinforcements.
That is a lot of troops.
In the form of their newly obtained clone army. Don't ask us where we got it from. Clone army, navy, assault craft, walkers, all this bullshit. And the conflict grows and grows and grows. The Separatists meet the Republic with their own droid tanks and spider droids and other things that have droid in the name, probably. Eventually leading to a Republic surface assault on Separatist capital ships. And that's the Clone Wars, right? The Clone Wars is going on now. The majority of the fighting in the Clone Wars is characterized by attempts from both sides to seize or maintain control of resource-rich planets, supply lanes, hyperspace
industrial
routes.
planets, Megiddo.
Yeah, both parties see the other's governmental bodies as corrupt. Anakin has a couple lines where he's like, the Separatists, Ahsoka, they want to take away our freedom.
Those communist separatists coming in to take away your freedom,
Every-
your car, your white picket fence are guaranteed by the Republic.
The Separatists have weapons of mass destruction, and they want to use them on America. Every time Anakin is George W. Bush, I want to kiss George Lucas on the mouth.
Yeah, no, I like this war.
In the Clone Wars episode, Heroes on Both Sides, which you've probably actually seen, the Republic's set to vote on a bill to increase military spending, commission the Kaminoan cloners to make some new clones. Because all their clones are getting killed in the war. They've been at war for like
People
a year
die
at
in
this
wars?
point. Yeah, people
No
die.
way.
Clones die. War funds are growing thin. The Republic is in deep debt. And of course, further militarization is going to drag the war effort out even longer. In order to afford the purchase, the Republic Senate has to vote to deregulate the International Banking Clan. Which, we know them. Supposedly neutral, kind of not really. They have a chairman on the Separatist Council. They have a senator in the Republic Senate.
So what is the national debt of the Republic?
That's why I said deep debt, is because I don't have numbers for you.
Like, what is the GDP of a galaxy, right?
3. I don't know. Oh, yeah. The Intergalactic Banking Clan, they are largely comprised of the Mune species, who aren't anti-Semitic characters. They don't even look at all like, okay.
Oh, it's them? Could we just not do anti-Semitic caricatures for once in history? There are plenty of other, groups to make fun of. Make fun of my people. The Cornish, we're weird, okay? The Cornish and the Irish, we're weird. Make us a banking stereotype.
Sophie,
God knows we could use it.
Sophie, could you, for the listeners, describe Mune Senator Nick's card to the audience?
He's wearing a weird hat. He has, a really long face with very pronounced cheekbones, and then just a nose that is
distressingly
85%
large.
of his face is just nose, and he looks very grumpy, and he has small hands.
Oh, and he's pale.
So,
yeah. Anyway, they'd have to deregulate the banks. To allow for the loan, they'd need to fund more soldiers. Padme Amidala, we know her. She goes undercover behind enemy lines. This is wild. I think this is treason. It's not important. She goes to Raxus.
She's doing a Rudolf Hess, is what she's doing. So Rudolf Hess was a Nazi, and what he did is when he thought that the United Kingdom was, because it's such a northern European nation, full of non-degenerate good Aryans, and that if given the opportunity, they would make peace with the Third Reich. So he got himself in an airplane, and he flew across the strait to the United Kingdom without authorization from anyone to try and negotiate a peace, and then spent the rest of the war as a prisoner of war in the United Kingdom.
Padme goes to her friend Mina Bonteri and essentially says, hey, this sucks. They want to do more war. Can we just kind of not? And Bonteri's like, okay, I'll bring it up. I'll make a motion to start some peace talks, or at least to, offer that to the Republic. She does this. It passes pretty easily in the Separatist Senate. Not everyone, obviously, but, it's a majority.
As it turns out, war is bad and people don't like it.
People don't like it. A year of war was really fucking bad for the galaxy and really bad for the Confederacy.
Think of the economy. People are starving.
But when Padme goes back to the Republic Senate to address the offer of peace talks, a terrorist attack on the Senate district interrupts the vote. So, in public, to the face of the Separatist Senate, Dooku supports the motion to end the war. But in secret, he sends a squad of demolition droids to stoke fear and anger from the Republic toward the Separatists in order to make sure that his actual constituents, the Intergalactic Banking Clan, the Techno Union, the Trade Federation, are going to keep being able to profit from the ever-escalating
and
war.
More importantly, that his dark daddy, Sidious, is going to eventually seize control.
That too. But Dooku has secret talks with the Banking Clan, and they're like, man, Dooku, you gotta not. We're not gonna do peace. We gotta keep doing the war. We want to keep making money from the war. And Dooku's like, yeah, man, I got you. He guarantees to the Trade Federation that he will stop that Republic vote somehow. And he does. Dooku also stages a false flag attack on his own Separatist Senate, which kills Senator Bonteri to justify withdrawing the initial Separatist peace proposal. And that's, of course, the Confederacy itself is started by Dooku as a plot by Chancellor Palpatine to destabilize the galaxy. It's worth mentioning that Palpatine eventually uses this corruption in the banking clan to legitimize full Republic control of the banks, which itself sets the stage for the planned economy of the Galactic Empire. But we're not here to talk about him. Not everything is about Palpatine. It is also worth mentioning that here, yes, we do have a race of people who definitely aren't anti-Semitic caricatures who
secretly manipulating the space
from
laser.
Underneath, the war is happening
They
because
even
of
have
them
a space laser,
to
don't
make
they?
money.
Like the Death Star designs.
They are connected to the Death Star designs. Those are just kind of owned by the Confederacy as a whole, so not specifically.
So why did they build the Malevolence instead of that?
They were going to build the Death Star. They wanted to, but that takes a lot of resources. Well, and they get got before they can do it. So, yeah. Ultimately, the Bill for Republic Deregulation of the Banks is passed.
This won't lead to any 2008 financial crises ever.
The bill that is proposed after the banks are deregulated is to produce 5 million clone troopers. It is motioned by the Kaminoan Senate representative, who is named Halliburtoni, like Halliburton, the war profiteering people.
Very subtle, George.
Yeah. That bill isn't passed, but there are others that are. Lots of clones are produced. Military spending continues to bankrupt the Republic, and the war is prolonged for 2 more years. Bad. The war was bad.
War is bad. I agree.
So we know how the Clone Wars ends. It's bullshit, right? The Clone Wars is staged, practically.
No shit.
To institute the Galactic Republic.
You mean the Empire?
The Galactic Empire. So the Confederacy of Independent Systems, right? It's a really fucking tragic story. There's this kind of uneasy tension that we see as outside observers between the worlds that leave the Republic for its corruption, for its vulnerability to corporate interests, and then the Confederacy being like thoroughly influenced and controlled, especially during the war, by corporate
ruthless plutocrats.
Yeah. The CIS is like as much of a corporate institution as it is a civilian political entity. And a lot of the people of the Confederacy don't know that.
Like we said earlier, the council is secret or whatever.
It's the business plot. It's not the business plot.
It is the business. It's kind of the business plot of the Confederation.
So, despite the genuine intentions of the Confederacy Senate, of the member worlds, of all of these systems that want to form a more democratic state than the one that they splintered from, the separatist war effort was potentially as corrupt as the Republic's, if not way more. Which, bad. Bad job, guys.
Very bad.
Bad job. Okay, we're back. We're going to talk about it. What is the point? Why do the Clone Wars? Why not just let the Confederacy secede?
Because that's not what you do. I don't know. You're not much of an institutional sort of person. You don't join things, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean by that?
Thank you. That's such a good compliment.
I have joined the Democratic Party.
Really?
Yeah. A long time ago.
All right. I also joined the Democratic Party a long time ago. I unjoined.
I joined the Utah Transit Authority, and I am invested in its success. I am voluntarily an American. When you have sort of an institution that you believe in and are part of, sometimes you will fight even if it's not in your best interest to do so. Even if, like, the alternative of your institution not existing in its current form or not existing at all wouldn't actually impact
The battle droids hate our freedom.
The battle droids hate our freedom. This is why the Republic was, like, fighting. Is not because, like, necessarily it would have been dissolved as an entity if the Confederacy continued, but because that's just what you do when someone tries to mess with your thing.
I mean, to recognize the Confederacy as a legitimate state would in some ways be a threat to the sovereign Galactic Republic, right? It is a Galactic Republic. It isn't everything, but it's most of everything.
I mean, if you're a state that's used to being effectively the only thing, it's very threatening to have something else.
The only thing that matters, certainly.
Even if it's not actually going to threaten anyone's livelihood or anything.
Right.
So,
and because they were most of everything, there are pragmatic reasons too, right? The Confederacy of Independent Systems is a series of disconnected territories. Trade between that, all of the little...
The economy!
Yeah, your galactic economy is going to be fucked by having this other thing that's like a little pocket state here, a little chunk of the Confederacy here. That's obnoxious. The Republic would lose a significant amount of its tax base, both from
until they
previously member worlds.
Until they can create the galactic version of the European Union.
But that's what the Republic was.
Yeah, and this is funny, and it is like sort of the same as the American Civil War because, okay, I'm not going to do like a Southern revisionism thing here. The Civil War was about slavery. It started because the South was full of racists who wanted to own people as property.
Probably a good caveat to put there in front of it.
Which is bad. The Official Daughters of Ferrix podcast statement,
bad.
Chattel slavery is bad. All slavery is bad. Chattel slavery is especially bad. That's why the South fought. That is not why the North fought.
Why did the North fight?
The North fought because, A, that thing I was mentioning earlier, the certain, like, je ne sais quoi of preserving the Union. We are one nation under God, indivisible, etc., etc., etc. The other is economic interest, right? The North needed the South because at the time they're going through the first stages of the Industrial Revolution, which were heavily dependent on textiles. And what do you need to make textiles?
Cotton.
Cotton. What's really good for making a lot of cotton?
Cotton.
Slaves in the American South are really good at making cotton. So there's sort of both like this, patriotic incentive to retain the South as part of the country because, we're all in this together forever, yada, yada, yada. And a second economic incentive that the North's path to continuing industrialization and prosperity is really threatened by losing a lot of its agricultural base.
Well, and a tremendous amount of the Republic's manufacturing infrastructure exists on what became CIS worlds. And the loss of certain trade routes, both for the Republic and for the Confederacy, would risk starving entire worlds. They're very real, very material concerns
They
here.
need to get Bill Clinton in here.
The what?
NAFTA.
We don't know the text of the Republic Constitution, right?
Like a horrible Byzantine document.
We don't have to deal with that here, but it's possible that the Confederacy left in an unconstitutional way. We know that there were, letters of secession that were written. The CIS initially left peacefully, and the Republic refused to acknowledge it as a sovereign state. And the CIS attacks and plans to kill a couple of Jedi and a Republic senator, and are building a droid army with which to use to legitimize separatist demands by force. And that makes a degree of sense. If the Republic isn't going to recognize you as a legitimate legal entity, then you need a reason for them to listen. The Republic's like, okay, well, maybe the separatists, we need to be worried about them. We need to be making an army. They're having these talks in the Senate going, should we have a military, guys? Should we maybe be making a military? And meanwhile, the separatists are making a droid army, and they're thinking, oh, well, we need to make a droid army because the Republic's probably making whatever. And then it breaks out into war.
This is very similar to what happened in the American Civil War. Because in school, right, we all learn about the Civil War. That's normally where most of our history education stops, unfortunately.
Yeah, at least in America.
Yeah, in the United States. I'm sure other places have weird and inaccurate places where their education stops as well. But ours is the Civil War, right? And it just seems like to all of us Lincoln is elected. The next day they bombed Fort Sumner and the war started. But that's not how it was because South Carolina, which was the first state to secede, issued their Declaration of Secession on Christmas Eve in 1960, right after Lincoln was officially elected, right before he was going to be inaugurated. But the actual war, the bombing of Fort Sumner, wasn't until May. And so all this time, these 4 or 5 months, states are still seceding and the Union is oh shit, well we might need to have a military to maintain the Union because we're not going to recognize these idiots. And then the South, as soon as Jeff Davis gets elected president, not by the people, but by various guys, then he's well, we need 100,000 troops to stop the war of northern aggression from happening.
We need 100,000 clones from the Kaminoan cloners.
And then the North is oh, you want to play like that? So Lincoln's hey, we've got our 16,000 men in the regular army.
Droids. In the regular army.
Sure. I mean...
I did it backwards. Continue.
We got 16,000 droidicas, and we need 100,000 regular battle droids to be conscripted from the Irish immigrants. And we need all the state governors to call up the territorial militias. And then it just sort of escalates until, by 1962, you have armies of 100,000 on both sides just clobbering each other to pieces at Bull Run and Antietam and a little bit later Gettysburg. I don't know, it just kind of goes to show that even in situations where there's secession, it is kind of a choice to actually start the war because none of this stuff happens overnight. Although I will say, in this case, both of these cases, it is the secessionists who shot first. The secessionists of the Americans, they bombed Fort Sumner. The separatists, they started the war.
Yeah.
They tried to assassinate a sitting senator.
Yeah.
And also tied up several members of an important paramilitary organization of the Republic in an arena and had them fight beasts to the death.
Okay, those guys had it coming. Obi-Wan was trespassing. It's castle law.
Castle doctrine is that you can have Obi-Wan fight the giant
If someone
rhino.
walks into your droid factory...
Then you can tie them to a giant tall pole and make them fight.
Yeah, send a fucking Nexu, send a...
Is the Nexu the one with, the praying mantis?
No, the Nexu's the cat-looking thing. The Accolade is the praying mantis. And...
What's the rhino?
Oh, it's a reek.
Star Wars ass name.
Alright, so the takeaway is sometimes war Happens. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Not always for a good reason.
Yeah.
Even when it's a civil war. Like, I tend to think that civil wars a lot of times have a better reason than, like, interstate wars.
Intrastate better than interstate.
Because normally there's, like, some legitimate grievances there, but interstate wars most of the time is just someone wanting to be a dick and steal your land or humiliate you. Like, there have been wars fought purely for humiliation purposes, like the Franco-Prussian War of 1898, when the Prussians literally just like curb stomped the French all the way to Paris and then didn't do very much to them except taking like Alsace. Sometimes you fight a war for very stupid reasons. Sometimes you fight a civil war for very stupid reasons. Maybe we should not have so many wars at all because they're bad and they kill people for no reason.
Yeah, we kind of keep coming back to this.
I'm not going to say that there's never been a war that was justified, because there certainly has.
Of course there have been wars that have been justified. The Galactic Civil War.
But most of them are very stupid, and we should not do them.
Yeah. Okay, we still don't have any emails because, I don't know, you guys hate us or whatever.
Us. Yeah. We suck. We're bad podcasters.
We do have a YouTube comment that I want to read and talk about a little bit from @Captain_Cannoli5566.
Nice.
Thanks, Captain Cannoli. Captain Cannoli says, "Hi, y'all. Love the channel and love the queer take on Star Wars. My take on Star Destroyers." So this is in response to you talking about how Star Destroyers are shaped the way they are, so you can fire all of your
guns
weaponry,
at once. Yeah.
At one spot. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, Star Destroyers aren't meant to lead in direct combat. They're more of giant mobile bases that can establish a large Imperial presence at the speed of light. You can't have a standing army in every corner of the galaxy, that's why crime and rebellion is so frequent, but you could have a giant army with air support and everything logistically you need at a moment's notice. Also, being able to concentrate fire on a single point can be a way to guarantee incoming ships/bombs are vaporized before hitting the main ship, and also makes
not A-wings though.
And also makes tractor beams easier to employ, but mostly they operate as giant mobile bases to enforce law/subdue systems. There are official books written by David Reynolds, a former archaeologist, that goes over the functionality of a lot of the Star Wars tech. I highly recommend it if you love learning about Star Wars. David West Reynolds, really cool guy. There's some weird-ass shit he did involving spending a bunch of time in Tunisia and finding the original filming locations for A New Hope. We're not going to actually talk about him now. That's not important. He did some of the cross-sections book. He did the Episode 1 Visual Dictionary. He did the Episode 2 Visual Dictionary. And he did Complete Vehicles. I don't know how much of what he wrote is now canon. I know that the 2013 Complete Vehicles has some stuff that was taken into the current Complete Vehicles. So what David Reynolds wrote is of varying canonicity. But yeah, cool guy. Can only finish this off with good luck with your channel and much love. Heart.
Very wholesome. So I kind of want to pontificate and expand a little bit on what they're saying about the importance of having mobile bases, because the United States actually does this. We have these ships that are called amphibious assault carriers, which carry basically an entire brigade of Marines, which is scary to anyone if you think about it for a minute, and an entire complement of aircraft. And they normally have like a missile destroyer with them. So basically like this doctrine of having like a big mobile base that also packs a lot of punch is kind of a real-world military doctrine that advanced militaries use, like ones that can actually afford to have like more than 2 boats. I totally recommend looking into the works of amphibious assault ships because they are so interesting, because they are simultaneously like a small aircraft carrier, a giant barracks for, once again, a brigade of Marines, which is a lot of people, and like storage to sustain a land invasion for like 3 weeks.
It's very Star Destroyer.
Yeah, very much a Star Destroyer. So thanks for the comment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Captain Cannoli.
I'm promoting you to commander.
You're commander now. Do with that what you will. We don't have any military oversight.
If you want to listen to new episodes as they release, you can find us on most places you can listen to podcasts. On our website, daughtersoffferrix.com, or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at FerrixPod. FERRIXPOD.
New episodes release every other Wednesday, so please listen to them. Listen to them on Wednesdays when they come out.
Hello.
I work hard to get them out on time. Please listen to our podcast. If you have any questions, suggestions, or corrections, you can send them into our show email, daughtersferrix@gmail.com. This is a good way to ensure that we will talk about it. We talked about Captain Cannoli's comment because it's the only thing we have, but if you email us, we'll definitely talk about it. So, I have been Eleanor Mueller. You can find me at The Letter Bomber on most platforms. Sophie, where can the good people find you?
You can find me at Sophia in SLC on Twitter, also on a different podcast about trains and public transportation called The Redline Podcast, which is at @TheRedline_. _pod.
Our episode is written and edited by me, Eleanor Mueller, and Sophia Dunstan. Our podcast art is by Jill Mueller. Our intro and outro music was arranged by me, with themes by Nicholas Bertel and John Williams. Thanks for listening.
All rights reserved. I will castle doctrine you if you plagiarize our podcast.